Ayashimon. Chapter 15, by the way, if you're trying to binge it. We got chapter 15 of Ayashimon by Yuji Kaku, and this chapter is entitled Always Having a Blast, which they definitely point at and definitely get into as this chapter goes on. So where we left off in the last chapter is 10 pulled out his mask, and we just saw him apply the mask, which goes back to what you and I had discussed about the forms being different. And he pulls out his mask, and we see what he looks like once he has his mask on, which his head kind of takes almost a Spider-Man-esque type of form. He still has the little curl on the top of his head like he has in his yokai form. But it seems like his body maintained the kind of human form that he shows most of the time. Right. And he has like a little curl on the top of his head, and the eyes are very expressive. There's no mouth. So again, it's like it really just really gives me Spider-Man vibes personally.
No, I agree with that.
And we start off with seeing what he looks like in the mask, and Cotton's number 2 is just immediately bad mouthing him like, yeah, you out here with this little cute mask, but you can't do anything, and at the end of the day, we're not afraid of you because we know that you're essentially a lower level. You're a country dude for a lower level Ayashimon that like all you can do is come through the ceiling and scare people. And that's definitely not enough for us. Also like that we get to see a little bit more of what the number 2 looks like in his yokai form as well, which if I'm not mistaken, and you correct me if you felt like it looked a little different, his head's like a tire.
100%.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of tire themes on his like Ayashimon form, if you will.
Because he's always with the hell go round or hellish wheel go round or what have you. So that makes sense, but it seems like his head is like a tire that opens up and has like teeth in it. Which I thought was cool. But we get a little bit of Ten's background, and we see that when he was an even younger demon, that he was with his grandmother living in the country, and she told him like just to move to the city. And I thought it was interesting that she was kind of explaining, because again, as we know, it takes Ayashimon at least 100 years to get a body. So going back to, God knows how long he's even been alive, but even when they went back to, we see a little bit of background, we see that when he's talking to his grandmother, she's explaining to him that like how things have changed over time, and that people aren't really afraid of the dark anymore. So his ability to scare people from coming through the ceiling and stuff has kind of been diminished, as well as the fact that people put lights on their ceilings now. So there's no real shadows for him to come out of. And she brought up the fact that, he should try to use money because that's pretty much the thing that humans worship. As opposed to trying to utilize the shadows. So we see a little bit more of his background, not a ton of it, but we just see a little of his origin, and then a little bit of where we picked him up from, where he was working at that agency and they would like, just bullying him basically. And we go a little bit back to his motivation, where he's, pretty much telling them like, he got serious because he's like, I'll take the insults, but you're not going to insult Mara or Urara. Like, I'm not going to let you insult Big Bro and Big Sis. And it was funny because as he was insulting Marl, talking about, oh, he's just a human, he's just like, yeah, you saying that, but every person that comes across him is shocked by when they see how strong he is once he gets serious. And they do a little bit of a cut literally to
his highlights,
his highlight reel real quick of everybody he ran into prior. And then we kind of snap back to what's going on with Morrow currently, and where we left off, Cotton had dropped him off the top of that building. Now, the way I felt about it last week in that chapter, I thought he was gonna hit the ground, but apparently he was close enough to the building, or maybe as he was falling, he directed himself back towards it.
Whatever. Out of sheer will.
Out of sheer will, and it's hilarious because as he's falling. And the one thing we've seen as a constant theme in Ayashimon with Morrow is that he's looking at everything like it's a manga, and all these he pretty much takes every fight as a new experience and a new opportunity to try something in a manga that he's seen in a manga. And so even it was, I even laughed when I read this, to the point that when 10 is talking about Morrow, he's like, and I'll quote him on this: the more dangerous it is, the more he's just like, this is just like a manga.
Yeah.
We see Morrow falling down the side of this building, clearly not afraid, but like smiling at the opportunity almost as he's falling.
Yeah.
And cocks his fist back and says, I always wanted to try this.
Yeah.
And well, he doesn't even say it. This is still
But you
10
can
narrating what he
safely
believes
assume.
Morrow would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's clearly something you can safely assume he would say. And he punches a crater into the side of this building and grabs onto the side of it to slow himself down so he doesn't hit the ground.
Yep.
And even in the moment that he does that, we see a panel with a look of shock from Cotton, like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
this dude just punched a crater in this building, and now he's keeping himself balanced out and sliding down. And then we cut away and we cut back to Morrow and his fight, and he's running towards the number 2 of the team, and he uses his, Ayashimon power to the hell go round, and he punches the ground directly in front of him. It also kind of looks like 10 stopped. Like he stopped right before he was going to get punched. And when he uses the hellish go round technique, it flips the ground. Now, something that I wasn't really abreast of, or I wasn't really paying attention to, was they're kind of standing on the highway.
Yeah.
And he uses that panel that flips because whatever he can punch, as we saw in the last chapter, it spins.
Into a wheel.
Yeah, it turns into a wheel. So 10 jumps down, and obviously he pursues him, but then 10 jumps into the ceiling and starts dropping all of the bikes from the ceiling down onto the number 2, pretty much proving that, like, whether you think his ability is a good thing or not, or whether you think it's cool or not, it's not really about what his ability is.
Yeah.
And kind of, which is the same thing in a lot of anime and manga I've seen. It's like, it's not the ability, it's the application.
Lumillion.
You know what I'm saying?
Togashi is another example of that.
Yeah, Lemillion's a good example of that. Honestly, if we've been real, Luffy.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that my power is just my body is rubber. Look what all he can do with that now. You know what I'm saying? So, but that pretty much was where we left off. So we leave off with 10 is pretty much, as it stands right now, is standing tall, hanging from the ceiling, and he's explaining, like, I dropped all these bikes on you. And a real Ayashimon makes others fear him. And we clearly see that. Yeah. So what's good now? And we clearly saw he was scared when them bikes was coming down. I don't imagine that was going to feel good. So, that's pretty much that. How did you feel about chapter 15?
Dude, there was it surpassed my expectations. Like, I feel like I mentioned in last episode, like, I thought he was going to surprise us in the sense that we'd get some good character development. But I didn't think he would win. So this, like, blew past my expectations.
Still don't know if he won. Still don't know if he won.
Right. You could argue it's just a panel, but I feel like they drew spirals in Waku's eyes, which could signify a knockout, maybe not. But again, who knows, right? Who knows what his recovery rate is. But no, this definitely blew past my expectations for 10. I did expect the character growth, though. I liked how we did get a little bit more exposition into the world that's established in this series, right? So we got a little bit more of an idea of, like, how yokai need to survive, right? So that little flashback I thought was pretty cool too, because it looks like yokai can incorporate, right, can form their bodies either off of money or the fear that they cause into humans, right? And I feel like maybe just for yokai in general, this might be common knowledge in, like, Japanese culture. I'm assuming, because, like, the concept of yokai, like spirits, ghosts, or whatever, that's not a concept that's unique to this manga. That's, like, in Japanese culture, if I'm not mistaken, right? But that flashback with his adoptive grandma, like, it just shows how the modernization of society, right? Like you said, there's electricity, so it's like, oh man, like, people aren't really afraid of the dark like that. So, like, old school yokai are just fated to disappear, like Yoda, you know what I mean, or like Jedi in general. So it's like 10 had to make the choice to move to the city just to survive, which I feel like adds a level of depth to his character that explains his behavior, right? It's like, it's not like homie was just out here cowardly. It's like, he's just really just trying to make it, man. I don't know. I thought that was a good bit, not just for giving 10 like a little bit more emotional depth, but also for giving us a little bit more insight into that world and into their culture. I really like his full power design. Like you said, it reminded me of a Spider-Man mask, especially with how expressive the eyes are. Shout out to Maro. Like I was jokingly predicting that last week, but apparently he just went straight Hulk and slowed his descent down by punching into a building, right?
Also, let's also point out the fact my man has no socks or shoes on. He is out here barefoot, wilding.
Like a Luffy. Well, Luffy has sandals, but I was well, not all the time. But I was no, actually, Luffy slides are low-key undefeated, kind of like Sakamoto's. But I was gonna say it looks like Urara was a little worried because she heaved a little sigh of relief, right? When he was on his descent and he was like eyeing that little rooftop situation, so he could like bounce off or whatever.
Right.
This chapter really showcased Ten's intelligence, kind of piggyback off of what you were saying with that it's not about the ability per se, but like how you use it. Because like he forced the battle to be on the lower highway, which would then be a situation where now he's got a ceiling, right? I thought it was also kind of funny how Waku's Harley being pulled down from the ceiling scared him so much that it snapped him out of his yokai form.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it snapped him out of his yokai form. And then this last panel, you got that fully realized self-confident 10 that has entered the chat, hanging from the ceiling. And this is going to be good for him, but good for the gang, the Urara gang, right? But it'd be funny, if he reverted back to his kind of cowardly, hesitant self outside of battle, just for the comedic purposes. I'm not saying that he's in battle, he'll probably be what he showed today. But if he reverts back to it's oh man, I don't know, big sis, I'm just out here. I think it'd be kind of funny. I'm looking forward to the next chapter. And also I want to mention something too. This is something that Matt and I talked about via text, but let's also keep in mind in terms of the frame of the current battle. And this is something that relates to Chairman Dopo. Cotton has not actually pulled out his mask. No. So there might be another level to his power. Remember, Cotton just switched into his do they call it a bullet of cloth or
damn near a bullet of cloth.
But he just switched to his yokai form. That's not his mask form. So there might be another level of power that model will have to deal with for the time being. I'm hyped for it because it's gonna the shonen formula, right? The protagonist is gonna have to evolve or figure something out to match that strength. I'm all for it, man. This is a good chapter. Never too late to get in on Ayashimon. Probably out of all the chapters we're talking about today, the easiest binge. And I'd say Sakamoto is a close second too. You can make Sakamoto if you haven't already. But yeah. All right.